Do you want to find out how we clean almost 200 of these breeding cages? Let's find out in this video. Hello everyone, my name is Philip, I'm the founder of StarPythons, and today I'm going to show you how we take care of our almost 200 breeding cages, how we clean them, how we disinfect them, and how we make sure that all our animals are healthy and stay healthy. Now, you might be wondering if cleaning carpet python cages or reptile cages in general is really worth a dedicated video. And I say yes, because what I just said, the health of our animals should always be our biggest priority. And there are things that can go wrong cleaning. You could use the completely wrong disinfectants or stuff like that. So you can put some thoughts into this. And as you can imagine, I did so. We run this place like a laboratory. So we have very strict procedures for everything you can imagine. We should distinguish between different settings. So, of course, when we talk about cleaning cages, we'll have the spot cleaning. So you see feces in a cage and you remove the feces right away. Then you put more bedding back in because you removed some of the bedding and you want to have the same amount of bedding inside the cage. So you simply put bedding back into the cage. But then you always have a scheduled deep cleaning, like let's say once a year or twice a year. And this is a scheduled event that you can plan and that you can have a standard procedure for. But of course, and that's something I want to highlight at the end of the video, you can always have some kind of outbreak situation. And in this case, I'm having, of course, nidovirus infections in mind, which are still a problem in the reptile community or snake and especially pet python community. So what do you do if you see that one of your pythons looks really sick? Let's say you have a lot of mucus in there and you're wondering what to do with a cage now. So I'll address this outbreak situation at the end of the video, but let's start with a scheduled deep cleaning. Needless to say, there are many different ways how to clean a reptile cage, but I'll show you exactly what we are doing here. So if you feel that's a good way, you can simply reproduce our steps. So let's see what we need. Actually, the first step is quite easy. We just basically need some warm water where we add some dish liquid or soap, to say so. We'll need a sponge. Then, of course, as always here, we'll use some nitrile gloves and some disinfectants that I'll talk about in a bit, because there are also difference between multiple different disinfectants that you could use for your cage. And then that's something that's a little unique here. I'll also address our vacuum cleaner, simply because it's generally not used in, let's say, lab settings. You'll never see a vacuum cleaner used in a lab because, yes, you guess, all the dust and everything that potentially could contain pathogens will be blown into the air. So you definitely do not want to use a vacuum cleaner inside a lab. But there is something you can do about that, and that's using a very, very special vacuum cleaner. And the one that we are actually using, that's one basically meant to be used with asbestos. So it has a special HEPA filter, but it also costs a whopping $1,000 US. So it's not something that everyone is interested in investing in. But hey, maybe it's for you if you have a larger collection and always had this problem, or now you just realized that your vacuum cleaner might be an issue, then that's something to look into. Maybe it's worth it getting one of those higher end HEPA filter vacuum cleaners. Okay, let's begin with removing the glass, the sliding doors, which we will treat separately. So we usually put some styrofoam on the ground next to the cages we are working on so that we do not damage the glass. So now that we have the snake out of our way, we remove the water dish. We are using one-time water dishes, so we'll throw that away and won't reuse it. Just the black ring, the holder, is going to be used again. And now we remove the hides. We will exchange them for clean disinfected hides, but you can also clean those right away, of course, and then reuse. So now we'll use the scoop to remove the bedding, and this is also a very important part because we do not use a hand brush, as you'll notice, because the hand brush is very, very difficult to disinfect at the end. So it's much easier just to use a scoop here and prevent this potential course of contamination later. So now that we have removed all the bedding from the cage, it's time for our very special vacuum cleaner. As I already said, I would not suggest using regular vacuum cleaners for this to prevent spreading around potential pathogens through the airflow by your vacuum cleaner. With the bedding being out of the way and everything vacuumed again, we just remove all kinds of soil with water and soap. So very simple, what everyone should have at home. Here at StarPythons, we use two different disinfectants. One of them is the good old isopropyl or ethanol-based 70% alcohol. And now some of you might wonder why 70%. And whenever I talk to customers and friends about alcohol-based disinfection, many say, "Hey, Philip, I also have 99% pure alcohol." And like, stop. Don't use that. It's bad. And the reason for that is that the 70% alcohol actually penetrates the bacterial cell wall more efficiently and completely. So the alcohol can enter the cell to coagulate all bacterial proteins and the bacterium dies. The added water actually also prevents the evaporation of the alcohol, so it stays in place and has more time to do its job. Now, when you go to alcohol concentrations over 91%, the proteins of the bacteria, for example, coagulate right away and they build a protective layer which protects other proteins from further coagulation, and that is obviously something that you do not want to happen. So make sure to always use 70% alcohol or professional alcohol-based products, such as the ones we are using to ensure a safe and reliable disinfection. The second product that we use here is active oxygen, which works similar to hydrogen peroxide. I mentioned this as the availability of different products depends a little bit on where you are located. So my product might not be available where you live. Both hydrogen peroxide and reactive oxygen are way more effective and kill or inactivate more pathogens, including difficult things such as bacterial spores. It also comes with some further advantages when compared to the alcohol-based products, and one of them being the lack of odor. So you can use it without disturbing animals right in your animal room. Another great thing is that it decomposes to water and oxygen, so it's completely harmless to animals, and you do not need to clean the cages after you used active oxygen disinfectants. So it's really, really great stuff to work with. Lastly, there are studies that show that it's significantly more effective than bleach or quaternary ammonium compounds, which are also very popular disinfectants out there and also very popular in our hobby. So the last step is then using our active oxygen wipes to disinfect the cage with all the advantages that these products offer when compared to alcohol. So once we have cleaned the cage, of course, the same procedure applied to the hides and the water dish holder. So we'll bring them to what we call the kitchen. You've seen that in the other video that I'll link down below, our facility tour. So we bring those to the kitchen, and then of course we also use just water and soap to clean them, to remove the soil and everything. And then we used also active oxygen wipes to disinfect the hides and the water dish holders. So now that everything was properly disinfected, we put fresh bedding back into the cage. And then of course we also add the hides and one-time water dish holder into the cage. And if you're wondering what we're doing right there, it's basically to make cleaning easier, because when they poop on the hides, it will stick to the plastic. But if you use a bit of that bedding, then it's going to be much easier to remove the poop later at the very end. So the last thing we need to do is now take care of the glass, the sliding doors. So this is where we actually use alcohol-based disinfection, simply because the active oxygen, as harmless as it is, it might leave some white salt back, which doesn't matter in the white cages, obviously, but you do not want to have this white film on the glass. So here we use the 70% alcohol to make sure to properly clean the doors. Now let's talk about the worst case scenario, and you have an outbreak of some kind in your collection. And I would like to stick to serpentoviruses or nidovirus here, because it's a very common example in our hobby, and people fear this. And so in my opinion, makes sense to know what I would suggest you are doing when you have a nidovirus outbreak in your collection. So let's just assume you have one very sick looking animal. You see a lot of mucus and it definitely makes sounds like a respiratory infection, or even worse, a snake's already lying dead in its cage. And one thing I would definitely recommend to read in this context would be the paper of Stephen Tillis et al. From 2023. That's something I'll also link in the description down below, because now we want to distinguish between infectivity and viral RNA. And to make it very simple, the question for us that's of concern is, what's the time frame where the virus is still infectious? We do not care if we can detect viral RNA by PCR, for example, in 4 weeks. That's good for diagnostic purposes, but that's not relevant for the outbreak. So Stephen did a great job finding out how long serpentoviruses stay infectious, and that's basically roughly 2 weeks. It depends on temperature. You can read all the details in his paper. And but if you stick to the 2 weeks at room temperature, then you are on the safe side. So it might surprise you, but if you have a cage where you suspect an outbreak, the best thing to do would probably be nothing. Because obviously you need to remove the animal, no matter if dead or alive. And of course you want to separate it from the rest of your collection. But then just leave the cage empty for 2 weeks, because whatever is in that cage, and now we are talking about nidovirus, for example, would not be infectious anymore after 2 weeks. And that's a period of time you want to wait before you move any stuff around, because no matter how careful you are, you might still have dust or other spread in the room. That's what you want to prevent. If you, for any reason, need to work in the cage during that time frame, maybe you do not have enough spare cages where you can simply put the animal in, or another animal needs to move to that cage and you do not have so much time, then of course you should definitely make sure to use gloves, and you should definitely make sure to change your whole clothes, and of course go to that cage or clean that cage last thing in the day before you go and have a shower. There's some special kind of glove that I would like to show you that you could also use. This is often used by vets for cattle and horses when they need to work where the sun don't shine. It's like a really, really large glove. So you can put this on both of your arms, obviously, and then you can work inside the cage, and dust or other stuff can't even reach your clothes. So that would be an additional protective layer. And of course, there are also other kinds of Tyveks or other suits you could use to work in such a cage. One thing that I also recommend, of course, no matter what kind of vacuum cleaner you have, no matter how fancy it is, if you fear an outbreak, then you should not use a vacuum cleaner, period, because there's always a mineral risk. Something could be blown through the air, and that's something you want to prevent, definitely. Thank you so much for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you do not want to miss future videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.